3 sinister tales of the haunted, terrifying encounters discovered on a rainy night alone. The rain fell hard, a relentless fury against the windows as the world outside blurred into shadows. Sarah cuddled on the floor with her kids, Mia and Tommy, surrounded by a fortress of toys. They laughed, the comforting sound almost drowned by the storm's dark symphony. Their home felt safe. Or at least it did until her phone buzzed. It was Gary from next door, his voice shaky, words slick with panic. "Sarah, there's something you need to know. Kids are going missing around here." Her heart dropped, a heavy stone in her chest. "What do you mean missing?" There was a frantic energy in his voice that sent chills down her spine. Hadn't she heard whispers earlier at the grocery store? Just idle gossip? Suddenly, warnings echoed louder than the rain. She looked around at the cheerful chaos of her living room, now tainted by shadows creeping through the curtain, flickers of lightning illuminating figures that seemed to move just beyond the glass. They've vanished, Sarah. No traces. Just gone. As the night dragged on, the power surged and flickered. Each failure left her in darkness, with only the ghost-like laughter of her children resonating through the void. Each laugh felt forbidding now, a dark echo of something deeper, more sinister. Sarah cringed as her kids whispered about an online friend, someone they'd met in a chat room. A friend, just a few streets away. Their innocent games now morphed into a nightmare. Who was this stranger, and what did they want? She felt the walls closing in, shadows stretching to swallow the laughter whole. "Who is this friend, kids?" she demanded, her heart hammering in her chest. "I dunno, Mommy, just a guy from online. We wanted to play at the park." Mia's eyes gleamed with excitement, oblivious to the storm brewing inside Sarah. "No more park, no more friends online. Not till I know who this is," she spat, her voice rising, fear coating every word. She hurriedly dialed the police, but they dismissed her worry like an annoying fly. "Kids will be kids, ma'am. Probably just a prank." Their words skated over her panic, and as she hung up, dread pooled deeper within her. She felt watched. Every creak of the house echoed like a whispering ghost, then the crash shattered the stillness. A significant sound from the backyard, a violent intrusion on the world she thought she knew. Panic surged like ice in her veins. She rushed to the window, heart racing. A figure darted past the tree line too quick to discern, but there was no doubt, her sanctuary felt violated. "Stay close to me," Sarah shouted, the tone sharp with fear. She could feel their alarm, their innocence threatened. They huddled together, eyes wide, waiting for her to guide them. "Mommy, why are you scared?" Tommy's voice trembled, innocent curiosity laced with dread. "Because, honey," she swallowed hard, realizing she needed to protect them from something that lurked far closer than she'd ever imagined. Gary, her friendly neighbor, was just out there, acting normal while all this darkness swirled around. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The storm howled outside, a furious symphony accompanied by her muffled heartbeat. Straining against shadows creeping closer, she sensed the unraveling threads of safety. What secrets did Gary hide behind those friendly eyes? Each gust of wind felt like it carried echoes of forgotten tales, reminding her of childhood stories filled with monsters, stories she never thought would become reality. In the darkness, Sarah steeled herself against the night. She was determined to uncover the truth, a confrontation looming ahead like thunder, and as a loud crash echoed just outside the back door, she knew she was about to face something that could shatter the fragile illusion of safety once and for all. The shadows beckoned, holding secrets that whispered of danger, and as she gripped her children's hands tightly, dread coursed through her. Would she ever feel safe again? The true nightmare was just beginning. The crash rang loudly, echoing in the walls of their once protected home. Heart racing, Sarah moved towards the back door, gripping the doorknob, her fingers trembling. She turned back to Mia and Tommy, their eyes wide with fear, reflecting the lightning flashes outside. They clung to each other, the warmth of their small bodies grounding Sarah as she struggled against panic. "Stay here," she commanded, though her voice quivered. She stepped outside, knowing the shadows were watching, maybe even mocking her cowardice. The rain lashed at her skin, chilling her to the bone, mingling with the rising dread that churned within her. Each step crunched on soaked grass as she crept into the backyard, heart hammering with each gust of wind that carried whispers of what lurked in the dark. What had she hoped to find? An explanation? Some assurance that her fears were unfounded. Among the swirling shadows, she caught sight of something shifted by the tree line, something distinctly not of nature. Goosebumps crawled along her arms as she squinted through the sheets of rain. It was a glimmer. Something bright, too bright for the storm. A flash of silver caught her eye, as if it were begging to be noticed. What was it? She moved closer, pulse quickening, breath hitching. The closer she got, the more that glimmer transformed, twisting into something grotesque. It was a child's bracelet, slick with rain and mud, its delicate charms tarnished but still recognizable. "Tommy!" She shouted instinctively, panic tightening its hold on her. Her feet felt heavy, as if the earth itself was gripping her down, urging her to turn back. But she pushed forward, knees weak, calling for her children again despite the surge of terror inside her. What had happened to the children? Was this bracelet a sign? She grabbed it, feeling cold metal between her fingers. It felt wrong, like it belonged to a world that no longer existed, a world of innocence overshadowed by something wicked. From behind her, a fleeting shadow flicked past the edge of her vision, and she spun around. Was it her imagination? Another blast of thunder roared through the night, drowning out any noise that should have given her a clue. But in that moment of silence, she heard it, a soft, unsettling giggle that echoed through the air. "Mommy!" Tommy's voice cut through the storm's wrath, laced with dread. "Stay where you are!" She yelled desperately, heart sinking as she turned back towards the house, racing to her children. Her hands trembled against the icy doorknob when she returned, fear tearing at her sanity. She flung the door open, yanking her kids close. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Mia whispered, sensing the atmosphere pressing down like a weight. "Everything's fine," she lied through gritted teeth after recalling the bracelet. "Just a storm, sweeties. Just a storm." But behind her forced smile was a deep-seated dread, clawing at her insides, but somewhere in the shadows, beneath the storm's fury, she felt the unseen presence still lingering, watching with feral intensity. Gary's window glowed with a flicker of light. Had he seen her? Maybe I should talk to him, she thought, but inside a warning blared. Suspicion twisted her gut. There was something off about those friendly smiles. Something deeper. With a glance back at the glimmering bracelet clutched tightly in her hand, Sarah knew answers were out there. But for every answer, there might be a darker truth waiting to be discovered. As a flicker of movement across the yard caught her attention, she held her breath, already knowing that the storm was hiding far worse than rain. What was it that lurked just out of sight? And what if Gary really was hiding something terrifying? The night was far from over, and the true horror was just beginning to reveal itself. The atmosphere inside the house was thick with anxiety, shadows dancing along the walls as the lightning illuminated the corners. Sarah could feel the children's hearts racing against her, their innocent trust teetering on the edge of a growing terror. She stepped back into the living room, shutting the door tightly behind her, as if the mere act could seal away the darkness that lurked outside. "Mommy, what's happening?" Tommy's voice trembled, tears pooling in his wide eyes. "Shoo. It's just a storm," she whispered, her heart not in her words. The bracelet hung heavily in her grip, a chilling reminder of what might have come to pass, a piece of someone else's life intertwined in their fate. As the rain battered the windows, the soft giggle returned, echoing in her mind, an innocent sound twisted by the storm into something far more sinister. The children huddled close, their warm bodies a comfort against the icy dread creeping through Sarah's veins. Suddenly, there was a loud knock at the front door, sending a shockwave through her body. Who could possibly be out there? Her breath caught, and she felt the children stiffen beside her. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered, clutching Tommy tighter. "It's probably just the wind or the trees," Sarah said, her voice more uncertain now. She could feel the pull of curiosity battling against her instinct to shield her children from whatever hid outside. The knock came again, louder this time, a desperate, urgent sound that echoed through their home. In response, Sarah's mind raced with images of dread. Could it be their neighbor, Gary? What if he had help, or worse, was he part of it all? Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, heart pounding so loudly she thought it might burst. She reached for the door handle, hesitating as the pounding rains washed over the world outside, the storm crescendoing into a furious orchestra of chaos. "Mommy, don't open it." Tommy's plea cut through her thoughts. "Maybe it's someone who can help us," she whispered back, her voice shaky. Pushing through the wall of terror, she threw open the door, bracing herself for whatever stood beyond that threshold. The sight before her made her stomach drop. It was Gary, drenched from head to toe, eyes wild and frenzied. "Sarah! You have to come with me. It's not safe here." "Why?" she demanded, but before he could answer, a low growl rolled through the night, reverberating in her bones. The trees seemed to shudder, and shadows shifted like living things. "We need to go now," Gary shouted over the noise, grabbing her wrist with urgency. "Not without my kids." Sarah shook her hand free and stepped back, eyes darting to the stormy night beyond. A movement flickered in the darkness behind Gary, a shape that slithered across the yard, more shadow than substance. She felt a chill wrap around her, tightening like a noose. She swallowed hard, stepping back toward her children. "Mia, Tommy," her voice trembled, "stay close." The shadows whispered to each other, teasing her ears with soft, mocking giggles. "Mommy?" Tommy whimpered, "I'm scared." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the house groaned, the entire structure seeming to protest against what was to come. Sarah felt the walls closing in, suffocating under the weight of dread that thickened like fog. "What is happening?" she gasped, desperately looking at Gary for answers. But the urgency in his eyes told her all she needed to know. Something was prowling the night, stalking them with intentions darker than she could ever grasp. "Sarah, we don't have time," Gary shouted, "you're running out of time." The shadows crept closer, but the door stood wide open, an invitation to the unknown. As thunder cracked above, Sarah felt an electric pulse of fear surge through her, pushing her on the brink of a decision, one that might seal her family's fate forever. Would she take the chance and confront the night ahead? Or would she hide and hope for the storm to pass? She stood frozen, clutching the bracelet as chilling laughter echoed through the rain, daring her to take the plunge into the abyss waiting just outside. What other horrors awaited them in that storm? Would surrendering to the outside be their last act of hope, or an invitation to doom? The wind howled like a wild animal, clawing at the edges of the house as if trying to pull it apart. Sarah's heart beat in time with the thunder, each bang overhead shaking her resolve just as much as the fear gripping her throat. Everything about this moment felt wrong. The rain, pounding like a warrior's drum, drowned out Tommy's whimpers, twisted around Gary's frantic pleas, wrapping Sarah in a cocoon of impending doom. She could feel the shadows pushing against her, urging her to step into the haunting night. "Please, Sarah. We have to move." Gary's voice broke through her daze, grounding her for just a moment. But still, she hesitated, torn between her instinct to protect her children and the rising instinct to flee. "Mommy, I don't want to go out there," Mia cried, her small hands gripping Sarah's arm like a lifeline. The shadows at the edge of the porch were shifting, writhing into grotesque shapes as another growl echoed from beyond the threshold. It was deep, rumbling with a hunger that made her stomach sink. Gary shifted his weight, eyes darting nervously toward the sound. "Answer it, Sarah. We can't stay here." Suddenly, lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the yard. For a split second, Sarah saw the outline of something dark and monstrous lurking within the trees, a creature, primal and ancient, with eyes that glinted like shards of glass. A shudder ran through her as it vanished back into the shadows. "I can't leave," her voice trembled, barely a whisper above the thunder. "Listen to me. I've seen what's out there. It's not just a storm. It's coming for you, for all of us." The intensity in Gary's eyes shocked her. It wasn't fear anymore, it was desperation. Suddenly, there came a thud, heavy and deliberate, right behind her. The children froze, eyes wide. Sarah turned slowly, every nerve screaming at her to avoid whatever she might find. The house felt alive around them, the walls inhaling sharply, waiting for her response. "Stay behind me," she shouted, placing herself as a shield for Tommy and Mia. A lurching figure appeared at the other side of the dim, flickering light, its face shrouded in shadow. "Mommy?" Tommy's voice quivered, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Get back!" Gary yelled. But before she could react, the lights went out, leaving them in suffocating darkness. In that moment, the world exploded into a cacophony of growls and anguished wails, muffled by the storm. Faint whispers swirled around them, drawing closer, creeping into Sarah's mind. "Sarah! Now!" Gary pulled at her arm again, urgency dripping from his words. "It's too late," a voice whispered within the shadows, curling around their thoughts with wicked delight. Cold sweat coated Sarah's palms. "What do we do?" she cried, panic rising. "Flee." Gary's grip tightened, as if holding on would somehow anchor them. Without thinking, she grabbed Mia's hand with her free one and clutched Tommy close to her chest. But just as they stepped back, the darkness surged forward, sharp claws emerging from the void, reaching, scratching. "Run!" They stumbled toward the door, hearts racing in unison, the sound overwhelming all else. They were met with a wall of wind, as if the storm itself was pushing back against them. "Move! Move!" Gary urged. With one final burst of resolve, they tore free of the house. The storm swallowed them whole, every step forward a battle against the tides of darkness that tried to pull them back, deeper into despair. But in the grip of chaos, a laugh echoed, familiar yet twisted, a sound that clawed at Sarah's sanity. It was the soft giggle again, taunting her from within the storm. "You can run but you can't hide." As they fled into the night, Sarah felt the pull of the shadows intensify, dragging at her memory, the bracelet still clamoring for attention. Questions flooded her mind. What did it all mean? What had she truly unleashed? And just as her feet slipped on the slick ground, she heard a snap behind her, a bone-chilling sound unlike anything she'd ever known. Were they truly free, or had they just awakened something worse? Ahead, through the rush of the storm, the path divided. One way promised escape, the other, unimaginable terror. Which way would they choose? The howling wind seemed to separate them from safety, creating a suffocating barrier of chaos and despair. Each step they took felt heavier, as if the very earth beneath them was trying to drag them back. Sarah glanced at Gary, his face was pale, the resolve dissolving into panic as the deep, guttural growls echoed around them, creeping closer with every breath. "Mia, hold on tight!" Sarah shouted, her voice barely reaching her over the relentless rain. The storm swallowed her words, twisting them into whispers of the abyss. She clutched Mia's tiny hand in hers, feeling the coldness seep into her bones. Tommy, trembling, clung to her skirt, looking up at her with wide, terrified eyes. "Mommy, I don't want to die," he whimpered. The innocence in his voice twisted Sarah's heart with gut-wrenching pain. "Neither do I, baby. Just stay close." She scanned the two paths. The right twisted into the darkness of the trees, while the left bore a faint shimmer, possibly the last light of the town. "Which way?" she panted, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Left. We have to go left," Gary insisted, pulling her gently toward the flickering glow. But as they moved, the shadows danced ominously near the tree-line, transforming into chaotic figures whose laughter rang in eerie harmony with the growls. "Follow me," Gary shouted, taking the lead. Sarah's pulse quickened as she stumbled behind him, pushing her fear aside. For the children's sake, with each hurried step, she felt the eyes of the unseen creature upon her, lurking just out of reach, feeding on their fear. The thought clawed at her mind, was it playing with them, relishing their torment? Light flickered again, casting eerie forms across the branches. Every shiver tricked her into thinking something lurked just a breath away. "Move! Faster!" Gary yelled, glancing over his shoulder. Sarah caught a glimpse of something grotesque, a mass of shadow darting behind them, just as another crack of lightning illuminated the space. The sight stole the breath from her lungs. It was there, huge and twisted, a snarl articulating abhorrence. "Go! Go!" Gary urged as the sound of snapping branches echoed like gunshots in the storm. Each noise ricocheted in Sarah's chest, a reminder of the danger they were whipping up behind them. They bolted forward, the desperate truth of their situation hitting like the cold rain. The flickering light drew nearer, they were almost there. But as they approached, the gleam dimmed, replaced by a suffocating fog that swept across the ground with chilling haste. "Gary, wait!" she shouted, fighting against dread. "What is it?" "We can't stop." His voice crackled with urgency. Suddenly, the shadows erupted into a frenzy. With a rush, tendrils shot from the gloom, grasping at their ankles like grasping fingers trying to drag them into the abyss. "Get back! Get back!" Sarah screamed as she pulled Tommy and Mia close, shielding them with her body. They stumbled, slipping on mud, and Sarah's heart raced as time slowed. "Mommy!" The children shrieked, fear resonating through her. "Don't look! Don't turn around!" A primal instinct kicked in. She fought against the shadowy hands, struggling to hold on to the light that was rapidly flickering away. Then a voice, soft and sinuous, whispered from the darkness, filling their ears like poison. "You cannot escape, you belong to us now." In a burst of defiance, Sarah glanced back one last time. The creature, more horrific than she'd imagined, loomed over them, its mouth curling into a sinister grin filled with sharp teeth that glinted ominously in the storm's brief illuminations. They had to do something. But with the path shrouded in mist and shadows clawing at them from all sides, hope felt like a distant dream. "Sarah! This way!" Gary shouted, pointing toward an opening ahead. As they began to sprint again, the terrible laughter followed, echoing through the storm, a reminder that the predators were never far behind. "Why is it laughing?" Tommy sobbed, and Sarah's heart cracked. "I don't know," she gasped, adrenaline fueling her feet. "But we have to keep moving." The whispers in the fog grew louder, and just when it seemed like they had chosen the right path, the world abruptly shifted. The way before them collapsed, the ground rippling like water beneath their feet, making the escape seem impossible. Would they be pulled under by the storm? Or was there a sliver of hope hidden within the shadows? The darkness surged, closing in around them, and Sarah could only wonder what price would they pay for their escape. The ground buckled beneath them, sending Sarah, Gary, and the children tumbling forward. The fog swirled, thickening around their bodies, consuming the small amount of light they had fought for. The laughter escalated, becoming a cacophony of shrieks that echoed in Sarah's head, threatening to drown her sanity. "Get up! Get up!" Gary shouted, pulling Sarah up first. She could barely see his face, just shadows stretching and twisting in the ghostly light that flickered above. The children were clambering behind them, their fingers clutching desperately to her hand. "Mommy!" Mia cried, her small voice barely audible over the maelstrom. "I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm right here," Sarah reassured her, stumbling to keep pace with Gary, who was trying to pull them away from the swirling chaos. The sounds shifted. They weren't just laughter anymore. There were whispers mingling, promises coded in malice. "Run!" Gary shouted again, glancing back. The creature was close now, an amorphous mass that pulsed and writhed with a hunger that transcended mere flesh. It was the embodiment of fear, a shadow made real by the deluge of their terror. "Don't look!" Yet every instinct urged Sarah to look, to understand what hunted them. It felt like an insatiable beast, gnarled and ancient. The whispers reached a fever pitch, stinging her ears as vivid images of despair flashed through her mind. Friends lost, moments tarnished by grief, the chilling echo of betrayal. It was feeding on their memories, turning their very existence into its feast. "Faster, Sarah, come on." Gary pulled her back to the moment, his eyes wide with adrenaline. She took a deep breath, steeling herself against the liquid darkness that pressed at her mind. They scrambled across what felt like a shifting landscape, not knowing where they were headed. Hope was a whisper, trust was slipping through their fingers like sand. "Where do we go?" Tommy whimpered. "Stay with me." Sarah panted, trying to remain calm for their sake. "There has to be something ahead." Suddenly, they stumbled into an open space, a clearing that felt both surreal and absolute. The storm raged around them, but for an instant, the air felt different here, thick, electric, almost alive. "What is this place?" Gary breathed, glancing around, but there was no answer. In the center of the clearing, a grotesque altar formed of twisted limbs and shattered bones emerged from the ground. It looked ancient, primal, its surface glistening with rain and something dark that churned. It wasn't nature. This was a construct of horror, a beacon pulling shadows closer. "Don't go near it," Sarah warned, holding Tommy and Mia back. The shadows seemed to pulse in response, twisting around the altar like a deranged coiling serpent. A guttural roar erupted from the depths of the forest, shaking the trees. The creature was there, beyond the edge of the light, its eyes twin points of malice glinting in the dark. Every inch of Sarah wanted to run, yet she was transfixed by the altar, the way it called to her, a dark promise woven with terror. "What do you want?" she shouted, anger surging through her fear. The whispers turned to howls, a whirlwind of rage and desperation that clawed at her senses. "Sacrifice freedom," the voices rang out in a chorus like nails scraping on a chalkboard. The children huddled closer as the world shifted again, tremors shaking the ground as the fog intensified. "Sarah!" Gary's voice was sharp with panic. At that moment, a realization struck her, perhaps that was the price they were destined to pay. "Don't let it take you, please," she begged, eyes wide and desperate. The shadows coiled tighter, and the altar seemed to ring with laughter, a dark echo of her own thoughts, taunting her with the unknown. "Run, now!" she screamed, and the moment shattered around them like glass, the storm closing in again, ready to drag them back into the maw of despair. As they turned to flee, a brilliant flash lit the clearing, illuminating the creature just a heartbeat before it leaped, and Sarah felt her soul teeter on the edge of darkness. But what if the escape only led them further into the nightmare? What if they were only threading deeper into its web? In that moment, the understanding dawned: it often wasn't a reflection of what waited beyond but what had already claimed part of them. The ground erupted beneath them as they sprinted through the clearing, each step echoing a primal rhythm of fear. Just beyond the light they barely clung to, the darkness roared. Sarah glanced back, her heartbeat now thunderous in her ears, and saw the rippling mass behind them, angry and relentless. "Keep running!" Gary yelled, pulling Mia and Tommy forward, his grip fierce yet comforting. But they were slowing, the sheer weight of despair dragging at their feet. "Don't look!" Just don't look. Sarah screamed, the words clawing their way out of her throat. But the urge to turn was lethal. The whispers beckoned, subtle and insidious, promising safety if they only would take a moment to understand. It was all a trick, she knew. But the shadows dripped with lies, seeping into her mind, telling her tales of what could be, if only they surrendered. A churning knot of panic tangled Sarah's stomach. Mia. Tommy. She didn't dare check if they were still with her, knowing the moment for that could mean losing them. The fog thickened again, swallowing their voices, their laughter, even the air. What do we do, Sarah? Tommy's voice barely broke through the chaos, quaking with terror. Look for the trees. Gary shouted. There. To the left. He pointed toward a dense thicket, the silhouettes of trunks standing tall and dark, like guardians against the encroaching shadows. They veered toward the trees, the branches clawing overhead, their leaves heavy with night mist. The creature's roars turned into guttural growls, vibrating through the air around them. It was losing patience, and its meal was so very close. Faster. We have to get there. Gary urged, pushing forward with wild determination. Suddenly, a piercing scream cut through the fog, a heart-wrenching sound that compelled them to freeze. Mia! Sarah cried. The girl had stumbled, tripped by a root that seemed to reach out from the ground like hands. She fell, her face pale and wide-eyed, but when Sarah rushed to her, it was too late. Mia looked toward the dark, as if entranced. No! Sarah yanked her upright, but the shadows danced around the child, forming shapes that flared in and out of her vision. Stay close, Gary said, eyes scanning the contour of the forest at their backs. We can't lose anyone else. But the fog twisted again, and the trees groaned. They were alive, it felt, with whispers threading through the taut silence. Unholy tales woven in half-comforting tones. Did it want them to stay? Did it want to scare them into surrender? The darkness pressed in close, the boundary between light and shadow warping until it felt like it could break at any moment. Look! Tommy pointed, and Sarah turned to see something. A flicker of light, dim and pulsing, just beyond the trees. There's a path. Is it safe? Gary asked, gauging the unsettling glow. What choice do we have? Sarah said, breath hitching in her throat. They edged toward the light, Mia's small fingers clutching Sarah's hand so tightly it hurt. But as they moved, the whispers turned deafening, a crescendo of despair that crackled like fire in their minds. Don't listen! Gary shouted, but it was too late. The temptation to understand, to know what waited beyond the flickering glow tangled tighter around their hearts. The path twisted into focus, the air growing heavier with dread as Sarah stepped closer, feeling something shift in the energy all around. She hesitated, sensing the heartbeat of something malign lurking in the light. Sarah! Gary's voice jolted her. We can't. But it was too late. They crossed the threshold into the glow, and the world split apart. A jarring horror engulfed them, voices screaming in agony, but it was too dark to see if the path led to salvation or demise. And as they stepped across, a new ripple of raw awareness curled around Sarah. They hadn't just entered a path, it was a choice, and choices have a terrible weight. What awaited them beyond, in that formidable light? Would it bring freedom, or would it plunge them deeper into the heart of their fears? The shadows seemed to wait, hungry for their next move. The light blinked like a distant star, yet it was not a beacon of hope. It was a trap, shimmering and wraith-like, drawing them in further with each trembling step. As they crossed the threshold, something shifted in the air, a coldness that twisted the warmth from their veins. The glow enveloped them, bright yet suffocating, like drowning in sunlight. Keep moving. We can't stop. Gary urged, but they felt the pull like treacle, each step weighed down by an unseen force. What is this place? Tommy's voice echoed, strained. Fear clawed at the edges of his tone. The whispers crawled through their minds, now louder and more urgent, words melting into a cacophony that rang with despair. "Stay, stay with us, Mia." Sarah cried out, feeling a sharp jolt of panic as she glanced back at the girl. But Mia was still there, albeit standing motionless, entranced by the glow that flickered like a dying flame. "Mia, snap out of it!" Sarah shouted, her heart racing. There was no time to lose. The shadows were breathing, they were closer now. Gary rushed to Mia, shaking her lightly. "We need to go. Now." But her eyes, once filled with life, were now glassy, reflecting the ethereal glow. "It's so beautiful," she whispered, a tone of wonder laced with an eerie calm that froze Sarah's blood. "Listen to me," Gary yelled, shaking her harder. "You have to come back. This isn't safe." The shadows flared, their whispers turning vicious, a symphony of rage that rose in a heartbeat. "Give in, join us. Don't listen. Don't listen." Sarah screamed, the words tearing from her lips as she felt the energy drop around her, her breath coming in quick, frightened gasps. The ground began to tremble beneath them, fissures appearing like dark, gaping mouths. A thick fog crept in, curling around their ankles, pulling them down. Gary finally pulled Mia free, yanking her back to them, but the moment broke the fragile calm, and the whispers turned to chaotic roars. The glow flickered violently, morphing into grotesque shapes that flitted between the trees. "Run! This way!" Sarah pointed toward a deeper part of the forest where the trees stood tightly together, creating a barrier against the frenzy behind them. They sprinted, hearts pounding like war drums, but the forest felt alive. The trees morphed and twisted, roots spiking up from the ground, reaching like hands desperate to hold them back. The whispers morphed into unintelligible shrieks and laughter that pierced their sanity. "Sarah!" Tommy cried out, his voice cracking. "Look out!" A jagged root suddenly lunged at her ankle, snaring her foot and sending her crashing to the ground. Pain shot through her leg as the darkness closed in, swirling around her, hungry and insatiable. "Mia!" she hollered, desperately reaching for the girl who stood there, eyes shimmering with an unsettling light. "Help me!" But when Mia turned, it was not to her aid. Her features shifted, smiling yet somehow wrong, as if the light had stolen her away and replaced her with something else. "Join us, Sarah." Mia crooned softly, sounding like a child yet hauntingly hollow. Gary yanked her free just as the darkness reached for her, fingers like smoke dancing in the air. He pulled her up, his expression filled with panic. "We have to move. Now." Sarah gasped for breath, glancing back at Mia who stood still, mesmerized by the darkness. In that split second, she felt the weight of decisions crashing over them. "Go." Her voice cracked, urgency spilling out of her. "Before it takes us." As they pushed onward, the fog thickened, and the shadows snapped at their heels. They stumbled through the maze of trees, hearts racing, desperate to escape but unsure where they were headed. With every step, a horror deeper than the last clawed at them. Shapes loomed in the darkness, laughter echoed from deeper within, and whispers swirled in languages unrecognizable. "Where do we go?" Tommy yelled over the cacophony, eyes wide with terror. "I don't know," Gary admitted, panic flashing through him. "Just keep moving." But around them, the path began to fold and twist, as if the forest itself conspired against them. No direction was true, no escape certain. The ground seemed to shift, swallowing the sound of their footsteps, consuming their very hope. As they reached an ominous clearing, a figure stood at the edge, a thin, spectral form cloaked in mist, beckoning them with a skeletal hand. "Come, closer, don't," Sarah shouted, pulling both Gary and Tommy back. "We can't trust it." But the spectral figure smiled, its lips curling back to reveal not a mouth, but a gaping void. "Join me in the light." As the darkness coiled tighter around them, and the whispers stretched out, Sarah's heart dropped. Was the end truly upon them? The shadows swayed like a storm, twisting and shifting. The figure hovered closer, and in that moment, with despair clawing at the edges of sanity, Sarah understood. The price of freedom was greater than she had ever imagined. How far would they go to save each other, and at what cost? The darkness grinned, ready for their next choice. The figure loomed larger, its skeletal hand stretching out, beckoning them with an invitation that felt more like a curse. Come to me, dear children. Freedom awaits. The shadows whispered again, chaotic murmurs blending with the figure's voice, each syllable sinking into their thoughts like poison. Panic surged in Sarah's chest, a frantic flutter as she tugged at Gary's arm. We can't. We need to go. The air crackled with tension, and Tommy's eyes darted between the clearing and the encroaching darkness. What do we do? He gasped, his breath coming in sharp bursts. Clarity pierced through the fog of confusion. We can't let it take us like it took Mia. Sarah shouted. We fight. With that desperate thought anchored in their minds, they turned away from the spectral form, bolting deeper into the forest. The ground trembled beneath their feet, as if the earth itself was alive, writhing in anticipation of their imminent despair. Branches whipped at their faces, sharp like claws, but they pushed through, driven by a terror that felt otherworldly. The whispers surged around them, now drowning out their breaths, growing louder and more aggressive. Stay with us, no. Sarah cried out, the word ripped from her throat, echoed by Gary and Tommy, a desperate mantra fighting against the encroaching dread, and then, a scream split the air, high and keening, slicing through the night. It was a sound so filled with anguish it froze the blood in Sarah's veins. Tommy stumbled, nearly losing his footing. What was that? Gary gripped his shoulder, eyes wide with fear. We can't stop. Keep moving. But the scream was unlike anything they had ever heard. It pierced the shadows, flickering lights dancing in the corners of their vision. It was as if the trees themselves reacted, crackling like a static charge as they surged forward, branches swaying hungrily as if their very structure craved the taste of fear. Look! Sarah pointed ahead, spotting a faint glimmer through the crackling trees. There's light. We can make it. They sprinted toward the light, but with each step, the forest grew more hostile. The thick fog choked the air, wrapping around them like a shroud. The light, a beacon gleaming with an unsettling hue, seemed to retreat with every frantic lunge. No! Don't! Gary stopped mid-sentence as the ground erupted beneath him. He fell, pulled down by a mass of writhing vines, sinister roots snaring his ankles and dragging him back into the darkness. Help! He yelled, fear straining his voice. Without thinking, Sarah lunged forward, grasping his wrist. Hold on. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a caged animal. Tommy knelt beside her, gripping Gary's other arm. Together, they pulled with everything they had, but the roots were relentless, thrumming with life, consuming the very essence of Gary's being. Let go. I'll be. Gary's scream cut off as the shadows surged, the forest howling with rage. No. You want to go. Sarah thrashed wildly, her fingers slip-sliding against his skin, pushing against the weight of despair, the tendrils still reaching hungrily toward them. Suddenly, Mia's voice rang out, echoing through the suffocating darkness. Join us. Sarah's heart shattered at the sound. Mia. No. The plea dripped with desperation as she caught a glimpse of Mia's figure emerging, eyes still filled with that uncanny, twisted glow. Mia, come back. Fight it. Tommy screamed over the howls of the forest, but Mia smiled, a haunting resemblance of the girl they once knew. It's beautiful here. You'll see a cold wave of dread washed over Sarah. There was something chillingly familiar in Mia's tone, a memory of light twisted into something monstrous, something they could no longer comprehend. Sarah, let go. Gary's voice broke through her thoughts, urgency slicing through her days. You have to save yourself. No. She shook her head wildly, pulling harder, desperation turning her resolve into raw strength. Not again, not again. With one final push, the roots recoiled as if struck by lightning, and Gary tumbled free. They stumbled backward, breathless, but a cacophony of chaos erupted around them. The shadows lunged, long fingers sprawled and grasping, eager to close the gap just moments before. In that fleeting moment of safety, Sarah turned, eyes wide, glancing back at Mia, who stood engulfed in a dim glow. The spectral figure lingered right behind her, eyes like voids, waiting as it reached for them all. "What do we do?" Tommy gasped, snapping Sarah back to the moment. They were cornered in the clearing. Breathless, terror-stricken, with nowhere left to run. The light flickered once more, compelling them, like a predator preparing to strike. "We move or we die," Sarah shouted, her voice trembling. "Follow me." And with that final plea, they dashed toward the looming darkness. The remnants of the spectral figure trailed behind, shrieking with a sound that echoed back through them, clawing at the core of who they were, but the light beckoned them still, waiting, twisting their thoughts. Where would they end up? Would they fall into darkness or find their way out? As they plunged into the depths, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, was there even a way back from this nightmare? The shadows danced, alive, whispering among themselves, as if they had already made their choice. But soon, very soon, they would learn the cost of freedom. The fog thickened as they pressed deeper into the forest, every escape route twisting into illusions, their hearts pounding in synchronicity. Sarah could feel the shadows about to engulf them, clawing at her resolve. Fear churned in her stomach like a wild beast, desperate and unrelenting. "Keep moving," she shouted, urgency strangling her voice as they sprinted toward the faint glimmer ahead. The whispers grew louder, weaving through the trees, promising release while threatening them with despair. It felt like the very air hung heavy with malevolence, each breath dragging them into darkness. "Why won't it stop?" Gary panted, glancing back as he pulled the children with him, hearts racing together in a manic rhythm. Each glance back felt less about locating their pursuers and more about understanding the choices they had made. Had they run far enough from Mia? Would they even make it out as a family? "Don't look," Sarah barked, still trying to protect the hope still flickering in her heart. "Just focus on getting to the light." The glow beckoned them closer, a false promise of safety masking the insidious reality of its origin. Each step felt weighted, like the earth itself was clawing back at them. "Mia!" Tommy cried out suddenly, tears slipping like rain down his cheeks. "Is she okay? Where is she?" The pain in his voice sliced through Sarah's worry, a reminder that they were tethered by love in a storm of horror. "We have to believe she is fighting. We can't let her go," Sarah urged, gripping Tommy's hand tighter, willing strength into her trembling fingers. The shadows swirled, and for a moment, Sarah felt warmth brush against her cheek, a fleeting, innocent memory of laughter, something beautiful tangled in heartache. But as the fear escalated, the whispers turned malicious. "Join us," they called, each syllable piercing like shards of ice in her mind. Then came the scream. A high, gut-wrenching wail erupted from somewhere within the depths of darkness, sending a wave of panic surging through them. "What was that?" Gary yelled out, his fear palpable. "Keep running," Sarah shouted, though every nerve in her body screamed to flee, to hide from the noise. Lightning flashed, illuminating a path ahead, and for a flickering instant, it felt like salvation waited just beyond the trees. But shadows danced in the periphery, malformed figures flitting amongst the branches, getting dangerously close. "They're coming," Gary shouted. "We can't stop." Suddenly, something latched onto Sarah's ankle, yanking her to the ground. "Help!" Her voice echoed in the storm, heart racing as she felt the cold grasp of tendrils wrapping around her limbs, pulling her with a dreadful force. "Mommy!" Tommy shrieked, hands reaching for her. "No!" Gary lunged. "You can't take her." He reached for her, but the shadows began to consume him too. "Fight! Don't let go!" With one desperate surge, Sarah managed to free a leg, kicking out against the encroaching darkness. "Grab him!" she called out, adrenaline giving her strength. With instincts honed, she took Tommy's hand and yanked desperately, pulling him into her lap as she fought against the suffocating darkness. Then, in a heartbeat, she saw it, a deep, swirling chiaroscuro manifesting, dark and chaotic, forming grotesque bonds through the fog. Shapes shifted, and she realized this was Mia, or what was left of her. "You can't leave. Join us." Mia's voice echoed, but behind the words was an insatiable hunger. "Mia. Fight. You have to come back." Sarah cried out, shaking, balancing terror and faith. The darkness grew thicker as swirling figures closed in, laying flat against the soft hum of a distorted lullaby. "Join us, we can keep you safe." Suddenly, a distant roar cut through the haze. "Run! Now!" Gary shouted, the urgency shaking Sarah from her reverie. She had to protect her children, protect Mia, and protect that flicker of hope in her heart. Gripping the hands of both children, Sarah tore them away from the specter of darkness. Together, they sprinted into the depths of the forest, the glow waning behind them, shadows swirling and churning violently around their figures. But with each pounding heartbeat, she felt the weight of choices building, choices that could entrap or free them. "Stand together!" Sarah yelled, pushing against the fear, as the dense fog engulfed them once again. "We find the light." In that relentless chaos, they stumbled through thick undergrowth until, suddenly, they broke free into a clearing where the moon illuminated everything just enough to see. "Look!" Tommy pointed, a brighter, flickering glow dancing just off to the left. "There." But as they took a step closer, the ground trembled once more. A shadow loomed large behind them, a colossal mass rippling with intent and hunger. "Go! Go now!" Gary urged, pulling the children toward the light. Sarah glanced back, and in that heartbeat, she felt the betrayal of despair as Mia's lost face stared back, twisting, begging them to return. But Sarah turned away, clenching her jaw. "No! We're stepping out of this nightmare." They sprinted toward the glow, every heartbeat pounding in Sarah's ears. The laughing shadows clawed back close in the chilling void. "You can never escape!" they shrieked, voices rising in an agonizing howl. But just as they were about to reach the light, the shadow lunged, a swirling mass that reached for them like a desperate lover. Sarah's heart raced wildly, eyes wide with terror, but she pushed through, gripping tightly to her children, refusing to give in. At the edge of the light, she felt a warm, comforting pulse. "Together!" she cried, squeezing their hands as they charged forward, bursting through the barrier as the laughter erupted into furious wails behind them. With a final leap, they broke through the shadows, a blinding surge of light swallowing them whole. Time twisted, everything spun, and Sarah felt dizzy. They landed hard on the other side, scattered against the soft grass under a serene sky. The storm had retreated, fading into a memory, darkness receding just like a nightmare at dawn. Mia was gone, but in that moment, Sarah felt a weight lift, the very essence of fear relinquished by their determination. The coils of darkness seemed far away now, haunting whispers fading as they breathed in the fresh, cool air. "Mommy?" Tommy asked softly, his small face twisted with worry. Sarah held them tightly, reassured by the safety of their presence. "We made it," she whispered, tears flowing freely now, part relief, part grief, but still, she felt the chill of shadows lingering just outside, watching, waiting. Though they had escaped, the dark presence was never too far, a constant reminder of what they had faced and what remained unfinished. What choices had they truly made? Would they ever really be free? "Now we must be strong, stick together," she said, gathering them close, finding a new resolve. Whatever darkness lurked, they would face it together. And as they turned their eyes toward the rising dawn, Sarah made a silent promise: they would not let fear win. And whatever shadows trailed behind them, they would never surrender. But deep down, a flicker of uncertainty gnawed at her heart, leaving her to wonder, what if this was just the beginning of something far darker? You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on our next exclusive story. Hit that bell to stay notified. Smash the like button now to keep our community strong and visible. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense ending. And most importantly, immediately share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this chilling conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to help support our journey.